Really? All the new CCNP security features right here in one episode? Well, find out next right here on IT Pro TV.
You're watching IT Pro TV.
That's right, new network security features in the CCNP Encore right here with Anthony Sequeira. All right, Anthony, here it is. You and I were talking about this. You're saying, hey, we're going to do this in one episode. I'm like, really? And you're like, yeah, let's do it. I was like, okay.
It's the Reader's Digest version. It's the Cliff Notes version of the new NP security. You know, we do not have to go deep here. Please. If you are super interested in what we're going to tell you about in this episode, then by all means go super deep. But if one of your primary objectives in this show is to achieve the Encore certification, then just beware that you could go down a rabbit hole here for no reason. Cisco is really just the security portfolio is coming along. It reminds me a lot of the whole, how well they're doing in the area of network management. And by the way, don't forget that Cisco is smart with acquisitions. So they bought SourceFire years ago, and they've got that really integrated well now, that technology. And that's where we're seeing huge gains in the area of security. So let's take a look at some of these devices. And one of the things I want to warn you about right away as we talk about Cisco's next generation equipment is that don't get confused. Cisco handles the acquisitions great. There is one complaint I have though, and that is the marketing department can never seem to land on a name. So they were initially calling them
SourceFire.
Yeah, they had the SourceFire nomenclature in there. So then they were like, okay, wait a minute, we got to drop SourceFire, but they held on to this firepower concept. And for the longest time, the word power in firepower was in all caps. And then there was the management system for firepower, and they were calling that the old Firesight language from SourceFire. So just don't be confused by that. You might see the same device called slightly different names. I apologize on behalf of Cisco for that. I go with all lowercase. That does seem to be what they've landed on. And the first device that's so exciting is the Firepower Next Generation Intrusion Prevention System. And what Cisco was always trying to do with their approach to IPS was make it so that the intrusion prevention system was not just signature based.
Right.
The tried and true method for a long time was, okay, we'll keep the signature database updated on an IPS, and that way when there's new attacks, the IPS can stop those attacks based on the signature of the attack. But that's a tricky game because what about zero-day attacks? So one of the enhancements that has come thanks to the firepower intelligence is these devices really are getting smarter at doing machine learning and things of that nature to not only guard against these signature-based things that they recognize, but also to get really smart in analyzing the network and catching something like a zero-day. We have the embedded advanced malware prevention, and I will demonstrate this in a moment. And apologies to my producer, I forgot that I do have something that I want to demonstrate in this episode. But the AMP, oh my gosh, this is like McAfee's on steroids. AMP is remarkable. I think you're going to be very impressed if you haven't seen it. There's the next generation firewall from what we call Firepower. And this device is incredible with the new, not only efficiencies, but as I said, new technologies that can help the device really intelligently analyze the network and make security decisions based on that. And good news, Ronnie, I know you're a huge fan of the adaptive security appliance from Cisco, as I am,
Right.
and we can kind of bolt in the firepower technology to that
Right.
through an upgrade of a modular ASA. So these new devices are super exciting and will demonstrate, as I said, the AMP solution.
Yeah, as we talk about those particular solutions there, the nice thing is what you were mentioning. The very fact is that they're not talking about just updating the signature definitions. So the whole idea here behind what Cisco also did with Firepower is they said, look, we realize that the way that we have to do threat defense is taking that entire life cycle approach at everything. So all of those devices really try to find themselves in the life cycle of how they defend your network, from before the attack to during the attack, and then even some type of retrospective after the attack as well. And they take all that stuff and they implement that, and then they actually put it into all these systems that allow for that advanced type of features that we're talking about. And so that's why they're so proud of this particular suite of products that they have.
You know, and one thing that I was thinking about as we were prepping for this episode, Ronnie, was the fact that, you know, I've always loved the concept of defense in depth, right?
Right.
We don't hear that much from Cisco anymore, but I've always loved it and I've embraced that concept. What a great idea. The host is defending itself. The switch is defending itself. The router is defending itself. The multi-layer switch is defending itself. The edge router is defending itself. The connection to the internet's defending itself. Like, that's how you want to build things. Well, now they've really amped it up.
Right.
No pun intended. Now they're still having us use that approach, but each device in the layered security that we build is getting smarter. The devices are getting more intelligent at every single layer. What I've got on screen right here is, I didn't want to forget to talk about it, is the Firepower Management Center. They, again, don't get confused if you see this called FireSight. That's the old SourceFire nomenclature. Now Cisco's landed on the FMC, the Firepower Management Controller. And this is another thing. Notice it's controller-based.
Right.
Is that a theme in Encore? You bet. So this is the control plane intelligence for all of those different security devices I mentioned. And great news for you, all of this is available in virtual editions. So one of the things I did to teach one of the older retired security exams here at IT Pro TV is I went up to AWS and I spun up a virtual FMC and virtual Firepower next generation gateways and IPSs, and you can practice with all of this stuff virtually inside of AWS. It cost me about $60 for the month. That's it, to play with all that stuff, and I was having like 8 to 10 hour sessions on the gear. There was no charge for the Cisco licensing. I was in a 90-day eval. The $60 was in EC2 charges with AWS. There was one day I forgot to turn all the stuff off. So that was an expensive 24 hours. So just some tips there on getting your hands on this equipment. And before I show you AMP real quick here, I just wanted to mention that, remember I said that the devices are going to want to get updated signatures? That hasn't changed. But what Cisco has done is they've really, with this, I don't know how they pronounce that. Talos, thank you. The Talos initiative, they've really upped the ante as far as these devices getting updated on the latest of attacks. And it's not just from Cisco.
Right.
The cool thing about this program is that there is a ton of vendors participating in it, all helping each other to make our devices more intelligent. So, Ronnie, could you tell us your favorite part about all this new stuff while I get a quick demo here prepped of AMP?
Sure. Yeah, when it comes down to it, remember that all these systems work together in kind of one of the neatest features that's out there, and why they're very proud of the idea of security. So all these appliances really hook into this Talos system that we're talking about, which is what they call their security intelligence. And not only is it connected to these different vendors that are also updating all the things that are going on, but even to, of course, customers too, when they get updates. Hey, 0-day attack ends up happening. Well, they send that on, and then that ends up getting in Talos, and then Talos can use that to do the analysis that it needs, and then update systems all over the world that are actually using that entire system. So it's neat because of the very fact is that they realize that they said, look, it was probably about probably longer than that, but at least 10 years ago when I became aware, that they said we can't just deal with an attack as it happens anymore. We have to be thinking so proactively. 0-day attacks. We need to know about what those are. We need to know about what happens right before the attack. So they gather intelligence about the different analysis that they need to before the attack happens. They are actually doing real-time analysis as attacks are happening after the effect. Then they can take a retrospective, and your machines can report that stuff back into the Talos system, so they are constantly updating these things. Now, speaking of that, though, there's also a hefty price tag, of course, that comes along with it as well. But if you want to talk about advanced security, using the FNC gives you full visibility in every single one of these devices that are actually being able to be managed. And since you spent some time in it, and you know, just like I do, it's not the most intuitive interface that there is to work with.
Yep.
But and you can get lost in just those drop-down menus that are there.
There's so much you can configure that there's just a ton of options.
Yeah, and the weird thing is that they all look the same, right?
Yeah.
So every single one of those little tiny tabs, they actually look the same. And you go, and all right, am I in the right one? You have to actually verify that each time, or you'll end up setting something wrong. How do I know that? I've done it.
Yep.
And it's terrible when you actually set it wrong, and then you push that out to all your devices, and then you're like, oh, yeah, that was me. And then you have to wait for that configuration to kind of plop out, and then you can do that. But the analysis that you get behind it, the analytics and the dashboards and the tools, they're amazing. That you can even see like a single IP address that is actually consuming, let's say, 10% of the traffic that's going on in your network, and actually identify that. And sometimes, depending on how you have it set up, you can even click on that device, and it can even show you the user that's logged in if you have that. So it's neat. It's very detailed.
There's two things you said there. I'm so glad that I threw it over to you, because there's two things you said there that are just gold for me to hear. Number one, I forgot to mention that, of course, the users are reporting into that intelligence system, not just the vendors. And the other thing you said there, Ronnie, that I loved was the fact that when it comes to misconfiguring, perhaps because there's so much to work with in the FMC, it's really scary, right? When we misconfigure let's say the underlay setup of our network infrastructure, we know if we did it wrong because we don't have connectivity, and it's so much easier to deal with. We may misconfigure the security environment, and then an attack gets in,
right.
Our entire network comes down, and now we may have, depending on how forgiving our employer is, we may have the famous RPE, the resume producing event.
Yeah, when I say that, the strange thing is, right, there's that little tool there that says, let's analyze this policy, or something like that actually gives you that ability to say, is this actually going to work the way you want to? Well, if you're like me, like, let's just test it out and do it.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, that didn't work the way, and then you start seeing all those different alerts that go on. But yeah, you should use the built-in features that allow you not to do that, but don't do it like I do.
So to really drive the point home of the complexity of this, and this is why Cisco will never do away with the security track. They may modify their certifications, but there's always going to be, in my opinion, a dedicated body of work to security. There's so much to learn here. We can prove that. Let's take a look at the AMP solution.
Oh, nice.
This is AMP for endpoints. And you see up at the top, there's the dashboard, and then analysis, and then outbreak control. And let me zoom in. And then management and accounts. But when you come in here, you are dealing with a ton of options for all of this stuff. Now, I am in a free trial. I have to admit, I don't know if you can get the free trial all that easily. I got mine from a friend in Cisco in the security division. So check into that. But what is cool, if you can get your hands on one of these trials, is the fact that you can come down here and you can load. It was down here initially, I guess, and then when you click on it, it goes away. What I've done is I've loaded a ton of sample data. So while you're in the eval, you can load all this false, well, it's real info, but for a fictitious organization. So you can go in and you can see things like there were 19 medium severity threats detected, and there was 14 high severity malware executions, and you can play with the information. Notice that there's quick starts, as you might guess, which is a great thing for how you connect the endpoints to this system. Remember where Cisco's going, just like all vendors, the advanced malware protection, the AMP for endpoints, the controller piece of it is in the cloud. So the client piece of it, you need to go and install what's called the connector. So you've got your Windows connector, your Mac connector, your Android connector, your iOS connector, and then these endpoints are checking in with the mothership up in the cloud, and they are, getting the control plane intelligence they need to run this stuff. But I highly encourage you to, not only for this client piece, but as I alluded to, consider going in, love this, iOS Clarity. So I've never even clicked into here, but I would assume what's going on is they're giving us a look, look at that, into what is going on in those iOS devices. So we've got I'm a little GUI challenged here at the moment, but there's a look at the apps that are, being utilized out there. And it's just really impressive software. I've never seen anything in my lifetime as extensive as this first layer of defense right out there at the host. So just a quick demo on AMP there, and tons to learn here. But from an Encore perspective, oh my gosh, it's almost a little embarrassing how, straightforward, if you were to be questioned about this in your exam, how straightforward those questions would be, because they're just giving us a little taste here, Ronnie, of all those next generation solutions.
All right, Anthony. Well, thank you for introducing us to these topics and, of course, these different devices that Cisco is very proud of. So remember to understand the idea of Talos itself as being their security intelligence, and the different devices that Anthony listed. All that works together in the system that is going to be part of the security solution that you definitely need to know about as you continue on in your career. All right, well, that'll do it for this episode then. Signing off for IT Pro TV, I'm your host, Ronnie Wong.
And I'm Anthony Sequeira.
Stay tuned right here for more of your CCNP Encore show.
Thank you for watching IT Pro TV.